Welcome to the scrutiny meeting that is being held today for the first time in Runcorn. I'm Dan Price, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Cheshire, and firstly I want to explain that I am not a police officer. I don't tell the police how to do their day job, but I do check on progress and ask how they are delivering against agreed plans and priorities. I was elected in 2024 to be the public's voice in policing across Cheshire. It's my role to make sure that the people of Cheshire are safe, feel safe, and that they have access to the correct justice services and that victims' voices are heard. You can find out much more about all the different things that my team does by visiting my website. If you Google Cheshire PCC, you'll easily find it. One of the most important things I do in my role is to hold the constabulary to account. Today is a formal meeting that is open to the public and is being recorded so people can watch it afterwards, and more informal meetings are held in private weekly. Today in the room from the constabulary we have the Deputy Chief Constable Mike Evans and the Head of Planning and Performance Paul Woods. Today's meeting will have a set format. Firstly, I would like to ask how the constabulary are doing on delivering against the police and crime plan. I'll be checking in on progress and making sure that the work being done reflects the priorities and concerns of our communities. Alongside the core areas of the plan, we also look at some specific issues that have been raised with me by the public. These sessions are a chance to bring some clarity and share evidence with open conversations based on what's really happening. This is an opportunity to be transparent. It is not an open forum. I won't be taking any questions from the audience today. However, anyone is always welcome to ask a question anytime, and you can email my office via the website to do that. You'll receive a response. The only person asking questions today will be me, and the only person answering questions today will be the Deputy Chief Constable. Please also note this session is being filmed and it will be posted online at a later date. Can we first of all agree the minutes from the previous meeting? They should now be agreed. And I'd like to invite now the Deputy Chief Constable to provide an overview of progress against my priorities since we last met.
Thank you, Commissioner. The recent HMIC FRS report graded the constabulary as good in its assessment of leadership and force management, one of only 6 forces in the country to achieve the grade. In particular, the report stated that the constabulary has an effective governance structure and robust performance management processes which reflect its community's priorities. We have a strong performance management arrangements aimed at delivering the best service possible to victims of crime and the public of Cheshire in general. At its very simplest, we aim to answer the calls quickly when people contact us, respond in an appropriate and timely way, take positive action at the scene, protect victims and bring offenders to justice. We continue to demonstrate that we are one of the best performing forces in the country, and we're really proud of that. Our time to answer 999 emergency calls remains strong, with almost 90% of calls answered in 4 seconds or less. For non-emergency calls, we continue to improve our answer times and abandonment rates. Incident response times are good, with more than 90% of emergency incidents attended within 15 minutes, and with an average attendance of 8 minutes. More than 85% of our Grade 2 incidents are attended within the hour, and the average attendance is less than 40 minutes. Since our HMIC Peel report, we have significantly improved our response to Grade 3 deferred incidents, with almost 80% now attended in 24 hours. We continue to prioritise those offences committed against the most vulnerable victims in our society. The proportion of offences brought to justice in cases of domestic abuse and sexual offences are higher than last year, and the charge rates are amongst the very best in the country. Victims of stalking and harassment are also more likely to have the offender charge in Cheshire than almost anywhere else in England and Wales. We believe our robust approach to these crime types is saving lives in Cheshire, and thankfully homicides are rare within the county, and we now have one of the lowest rates of homicide in the country. Cheshire remains a safe place to live, with recorded levels of neighbourhood crime down 9% on last year, and the rates of burglary and vehicle crime are some of the lowest nationally. We are bringing more of these offences to justice than we were last year, and again we have charge rates that compare well with other forces. We continue to use stop and search as an effective tactic to target those involved in drug or knife-related crime. Operationally, the summer represents a busy period for us. We've recently launched our operation in support of the government's Safer Streets Summer Initiative. We will be focusing on antisocial behaviour, crime and enforcement, diversionary activities and visibility and engagement, working with our partner agencies to tackle local community problems. At the launch in Warrington, we seized over 750 illegal vape products, engaged with 100 retail staff linked to antisocial behaviour hotspots, and conducted commercial waste checks at 44 properties with the Environmental Protection Agency. We also have further operations planned across the county to disrupt and deter the dangerous riding of scrambler and e-bikes, to tackle retail crime, street robbery and antisocial behaviour. And of course, August Bank Holiday sees one of Cheshire's largest operations each year, policing the Creamfields Music Festival. The event is the largest dance music festival in Europe and will see 80,000 people per day attending, the equivalent of the population of the town of the size of Crewe, and more than 1,000 officers will be involved in the policing operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Constable. I'm particularly happy to hear about the work that's happening with regards to the Safer Streets Summer initiative. And I know I was in one of our towns, Nantwich, last Friday, which is on the receiving end of some of the funding from this office associated with that. And I know it's been really well received. And we spoke to a number of young people that were on the receiving end of some of those funded programmes that we were committing to. So it's a really positive direction of travel that hopefully means that we don't see the incidents that we had last summer. And I know that you all worked so hard at making sure it was not a problem in our county and supporting other areas. We've obviously had the performance pack. As is normal, I don't go through each individual slide, but instead draw out the slides in particular that I want to ask some questions on. So can we now move to slide 6 of the performance pack? Perfect. So, emergency call handling. It's encouraging to see that 88% of 999 calls were answered within 4 seconds. This is a strong performance and reflects our commitment to ensuring that when the public needs the police, they are there quickly and reliably. This aligns closely with the priorities set out in the Police and Crime Plan for 2024 to 2028, and it's a vital part of making communities feel safe and supported. We'll continue to monitor and improve this service to meet the expectations of the people of Cheshire. But this is a really good example for me of where the Constabulary is doing a great job at making sure that, as I've said, we are there and are supporting people when they're needed. I'd now like to move on to slide 7, perfect, which is the non-emergency call abandonment. What percentage of calls are classified as what we call repeat demand? And what does that mean?
Okay, it's a really difficult topic to sort of nail down because we don't have one broad definition for repeat. The reason being, if 2 people work in a shop and they ring on consecutive days for shoplifting, is that a repeat caller? Is it a repeat location? So whilst we monitor them through our crime recording, we don't have an actual figure that says this is our percentage of repeat demand. We've got a range of approaches to identifying individual repeat callers or calls in relation to locations. High volumes of repeat callers can often be associated with high abandonment rates. So if the constabulary is busy, we often see it if we get an incident on the motorway or something, people will ring, hang up, ring back, hang up, and then they log as repeats, which is why we guide away from using those purely. What I can tell you is we've significantly reduced the abandonment rates over recent years, and for the last 12 months it's at 9.7%, so less than 10% of our calls. And it's important to note that also include callers who may end up the call because our pre-recorded message gives channel shift direct into the website or similar. On a local level, we use our information on repeat locations, repeat calls to premises, and repeat callers to inform our local beat management. So using our Power BI products, our staff can go on and see on their beat who's rung us the most, and then dig into whether that is because of essentially they've an abandonment rate and come back, or is it because they have a problem at their location, or is it an employee of a shop. So we do use that information for problem solving, which helps us undertake both problem solving and enforcement around that. And within the force control room, we're also trying to do some work to identify phone numbers and individuals who repeatedly ring the police, either because of a genuine need or because they need support in other areas of their life, including those abusing the 101 or 999 system, or those in crisis. And again, we've got a range of problem-solving approaches for those individuals as well.
I mean, I'm particularly keen to understand what percentage of the public are calling to chase up an incident that they may have reported previously. So I'd really welcome that data being collected. I'm actually visiting one of our neighbouring forces today to see how they've introduced an awful lot of technology into their control rooms. My next question aligns with the Police and Crime Plan for 2024-25, and it highlights the importance of embracing this innovation and technology so that we can deliver a modern and efficient and responsive police service. And the public's expectations are evolving, and we've heard from the citizens' assemblies that we need new ways of communicating. So it's vital that the Constabulary continues to explore how automation and digital tools can enhance service delivery. It's one of the reasons why I am also going out and seeing what others are doing. How is the force using automation in this space to reflect modern ways of communicating?
Okay, just on your first point around understanding the demand of people ringing us, chasing updates, that's a real frustration of ours as well, in that officers, we're trying to make it as simple as we can for officers to give the right contact details. Yeah. So we've introduced digital business cards, whereby an officer carries it with them, they can touch it against someone's phone and it will automatically load their details into the address book of the phone. So we've done that. We've introduced automated text messages out, so when you do ring up, we can send you a link to the victim information pack and direct you in need of support for the constabulary, so that you've got that in a PDF format on your phone as well. In terms of 101 non-emergency calls, they're all sent through our Saab IT platform, and that pulls together automation to look at, have you rung before? If you have rung before, it will take that number. What address does that number link to? What is the name of that? So that you're not going through that same data set, albeit with information management, we need to make sure that just because you've rung from that number, you haven't moved out and you haven't. But it gives us a starter for 10 in terms of collating that information and prevents that double keying. And then for 999 calls, it will pull through the address, meaning we can get wheels turning towards an incident whilst that operator is still on the call getting details. So it's given us a real advantage compared to our old system, where you had to essentially wait for all the information before you could deploy. And that's one of the reasons our emergency response rates are so good. We've also utilised single online home, and that allows us to divert a lot of contact into appropriate routes automatically without the need for an operator to send it various different ways. And we use Good Sam and video calling, so we can send a Good Sam link out to someone at the scene who can press a button, and that will give us live video footage into the control room, what's happening there. And we're looking at similar technology for our drones as well to be able to use those. So we are trying to utilise a range of options, albeit accepting that every force does things a little bit differently. We are looking nationally and visiting those other forces as well. We've got a visit plan later this month to a force who are using technology in their control room. The only other assurance I would give you, obviously, is the technology is expensive, and we need to make sure it's actually going to improve on. Some of these forces are playing catch up to us, and we need to make sure that if we're going to invest in that technology, it's going to be better than the service we already offer.
No, absolutely. And I'm also pleased that, my office alongside the Constabulary are now co-creating an IT and digital strategy. So I do think we can embed an awful lot of that ambition that we state in the Police and Crime Plan into real, tangible sort of plans for the public across the county. I'd now like to move us on to slide 8, which is relating to complaints. This slide shows an 8% increase over the last 12 months. Is this a trend we are seeing nationally, and how does this look compared to Cheshire's most similar group?
Okay, the most recent IOPC data shows us that the proportion of complaints which relate to the delivery of duties and service is lower than the national average, and that most of our most similar forces, which would indicate that in terms of general service the public in Cheshire receive a small proportion of allegations. We do have a much higher than average proportion of allegations relating to arrest and detention. Both in terms of our most similar forces and nationally, that we've increased on that as well. Based on the most recent nationally available data for the last 12 months to March 2024, Cheshire's got the 7th highest number of custody detentions per 1,000 population in the country. So we do know we're not shy about our robust approach to tackling domestic abuse and protecting the vulnerable, and that proactive response to crime and criminality, which obviously is key in delivering our crime reductions, and it is replicated with our increase in offences charged and brought to justice. But it does have a knock-on of generating complaints about people who have been arrested and feel that either they shouldn't have been arrested or they were in custody longer. The other assurance I would give you is that we do a lot of work around our complaints, so our professional standards meet with all of our local policing areas monthly, and they will go through with the superintendents and the chief inspectors any trends, any officers who've been identified, because we do have some officers who generate more complaints than others, either because of the way their approach to policing, or sometimes because they're very proactive and they're out to stop search people in the middle of the night. And obviously that helps us root out people who aren't or shouldn't be part of the organisation. So we do have those checks and balances in place as well.
I think that particular point is particularly reassuring for the public at large, that if there are officers within the constabulary in Cheshire that do have a much higher rate, then it is being monitored. That is something that they are sort of marked against, and action is taken where that seems to be unexplainable. It's also reassuring to hear that we're 7th highest in the country per head of population for charges and arrests. So I think that does also give some extra insight as to why complaints would be increasing. What you did sort of touch on it somewhat, but what is the main type of complaint that we receive, and what is being done to put that right?
So we broadly have sort of 3 key trains. One is people around lack of contact. So can I have an update on this crime? We're obviously doing a lot of work around the victim code of practice and looking at what automation opportunities have we got there to push updates through, rather than obviously best meaning cops come on duty and then they're sent to a job and they essentially people not being updated when they should. Incivility we often see a lot of, and a lot of that is an education piece as well, around the fact that this might be the 10th person you've dealt with today, but actually it's also the first time they've been a victim of crime or have been on the other side of the justice system. So actually just remember to treat those people as individuals, and doing that education piece all the way through from probationary training and onwards. And like I say, that's part of the, look, you've now had 3 complaints in 3 months and they all follow the same trend. So we're going to deal with it this way. And we also then flag to our counter-corruption unit, who can do work behind the scenes essentially to see whether there's any broad themes around that. And then, as I say, the third one is that linked to arrest and detention and custody. So those complaints, which whilst, yes, we can say it's really positive because we are locking people up and charging them, we also can't be sort of naive to the fact that there is work to do there, and we still need to make sure we've got really good governance in our custody suites now. Obviously, you've seen the 3 of them have been refurbished around the welfare and rights of prisoners, privacy in terms of booking in. So we're taking all sorts of steps that we can to try and make the custody facility as pleasant a pace as it can be, because recognising that not everyone ends up in police custody is a bad person.
Sure.
So making sure that we respect and treat people as individuals as we go.
Okay, that latter point is I think really reassuring. Can we now move on to slide 12, which relates to recorded crime? It's a key priority within the police and crime plan to reduce crime. This commitment is central over these years ahead of us, and it sets out a clear vision for a safer Cheshire. There has been a 2.2% reduction in crime, and that is absolutely the direction of travel that we all want to be heading in. How does this look nationally compared to recorded crime trends, and where does this put Cheshire in terms of being a safe place to live?
Okay, so the 2.2% reduction is pretty much mirrored nationally, so that is a consistent with the rest of the country, and it puts us with the 13th lowest crime rate in the country. We are the 22nd force in terms of size and numbers, so actually we are outperforming where we should be in that space. The one other assurance I suppose I would give you is we've seen reductions across traditional crime types where members of the public would ring us around burglary, vehicle crime, incidents like that, where we've seen our increases has been in the vulnerability space, so sexual offences, online child abuse, areas like that, which while we never want to see increases in some crime types, the fact that, one, it tells me we're recording them properly, because we know the range of reductions is about -13 to plus 17% in those categories. So some forces aren't recognising that vulnerability and recording it. I think we are recognising it, we are recording it. Our rape recording particularly is around about 95% compliance when we've audited it at its lowest, and then upwards of that. and it tells me that the investment we've put in over the last 12 months to training our staff in recognising vulnerability, and that's all the way from our staff dealing with vulnerability at the scene to when partner referrals come in and somebody actually trawls through it and says, no, there's a crime here that, someone will report X, and as part of it, they will disclose that 20 years ago they were a victim of something, sexual abuse. We'll make sure we record that and then look for the opportunities to, one, support them, and two, bring any offenders to justice. So our increases have been in that vulnerability space.
I think we had at the recent Citizens' Assembly in both Widnes and Runcorn, Chief Superintendent Pete Crowcroft really perfectly explained how an officer now goes into a home and where there's been a reported incident of domestic violence, and actually is insistent on seeing the children in that home, and explaining as a consequence of that approach, neglect is significantly higher as a reported crime than it was 12 months previously. And we spoke about this at the last scrutiny function. Right. But I think I can understand why, because we are being so keen, and rightly so, to get to the bottom of those crimes associated with vulnerability, that we will obviously have increases there. We're literally going out and finding the crimes in that space. So I think that's something that the public broadly are happy to hear about, and certainly in the assemblies, members of the public were impressed that that was the approach that the constabulary was taking, because obviously people have assumptions as to what they think is happening, but very rarely get the sort of real insight that was being provided in that room that night. Okay, I'd like us to now move on to slide 14, which is obviously relating to incident response, and we'll also have some questions on slides 15 and 16 in this space. On slide 14, as I said in the policing crime plan, that when people call the police, they expect a timely and effective response. And I said we'd work with our Chief Constable, and obviously in his absence, our Deputy Chief Constable, to ensure that Cheshire Constabulary continues to improve how it responds to incidents. And I want the public to have confidence that help will be there when they need it most. And everything you've said so far today have been real reassurances of that. In particular on slide 15, Deputy Chief Constable, this may be a good time to explain to the public what these different categories mean.
Okay, and it is quite a myriad of categories. Yes. The first thing I would say is it doesn't matter whether you ring 999 or 101, we will categorise it. So sometimes people will ring 999 and it won't be an emergency in terms of our response. And likewise, you'll often get people ring 101 and say, I don't want to bother you, and then disclose something that absolutely we need to get there quickly because there is a crime in progress or an offender on scene. So our control room operators are all trained to carry out what we call a Thrive risk assessment, which is an assessment of threat, harm, risk, investigative opportunities, any vulnerability that exists, and any opportunities for engagement. And then they will essentially put it into three main categories. Grade 1 is what the public would recognise as a blue light response, where our target is 15 minutes. Across a lot of areas of the county, we are a lot quicker than 15 minutes, certainly. We're in Runcorn today. You can get to most parts of Runcorn in about 5 or 6 minutes on a blue light. If you then move out to Macclesfield or sort of the west of the county in the more rural areas, whilst we have rural patrols defaulted, we have to balance that, and some of them just geographically slows us down a little bit, which is why that average attendance is 8 minutes, but we use a measure of 15 minutes. Grade 2 then is, I refer to it as get there without your blue lights on, but get there in the same sort of leave the police station now, head out and go and drive to the conditions to allow you to get there. So our assessment would say there's a degree of urgency or a degree of importance, but we don't need to put ourselves and others at risk in terms of a blue light response. And we aim to arrive at those incidents within the hour. And again, that can vary depending on travelling time, geography and everything else. And we achieve that in about 86% of cases with an average attendance of 39 minutes. And then grade 3 is where there's no requirement for an immediate or priority response. And often that'll be at the request of a victim. So they might ring us and say, I had my car broken into my house, whatever it is, I had something happen, but I'm at work till 6 o'clock. Can you come after 6? So we will try and be victim-led, although if we think it needs to be quicker, we will. We didn't previously have sort of targets around that. We've now done a lot of work to bring them in within 24 hours. and we achieve that in about 78% of cases, but there is more work to do in that space. We've now got an incident management response group around those, looking particularly at those grade 3 incidents. And what, again, the other assurance I would give you is we can grade something. If we haven't got there, our control room operators will constantly rethrive it, so they will continue to spin that. Is there any new information? Is there a second call come in? Is there something else where we go, actually, the kids are going to be home at 3 o'clock, so whilst we were going to go at 5, let's bring it forward and go at 2. We'll constantly keep that under that review cycle until we get there. And we have victim contact officers as well, who will ring if we're not going to get there and say, look, we can't come because we've had a myriad of incidents come in that are on an emergency response, but this is where we are. Are you still safe? Mm-hmm. Do you need any support in the interim?
The one in particular, which I think the public are naturally the most focused on, is those emergency incident response times. And I don't think many appreciate, and we certainly again got this very clearly at the Assembly, that sort of target which the Constabulary is monitored against, that 15 minutes, that is actually quite a long period of time. But in Cheshire, it's on average 8 minutes.
Yes.
That is a remarkable situation that I just don't think many members of the public. And again, we informed the public about this, and it was really, you could see the response in the room, like, wow, isn't that really a great situation that we're in? For that to be happening, for us to be getting, 92% attended within 15 minutes, but on average anyway, 8 minutes, that is quite remarkable. I will say that, 8 minutes is still too long.
If you're struggling with someone, it's a long time.
If absolutely. And I know we are exploring with drone technology opportunities that exist to have even faster times, and I know we're going to be joining that early adoption program for beyond the visual line of sight drone tech, and that is all part of that approach of almost drone as a first responder. That doesn't mean that a car won't be coming, but it does mean that there'll be more insight potentially when those officers do arrive. But it's a really good picture for the county, and I think the public at large don't actually know how it's being graded and how actually well served we are in Cheshire. And since May of last year, I am also pleased to see that there's been this big improvement of deferred incidents. Can you explain the drivers behind this?
Yeah, so obviously we had our HMIC inspection. One of the things they gave us feedback around was our management of grade 3 incidents. We've acted immediately around that. It's led by Ali Ross, who's our ACC for neighbourhood policing. We've got an incident management goal group, which I touched on earlier, which is led by Gareth Wrigley, who's the Chief Superintendent for Force Operations. We've rewritten the incident deployment policy to outline specific expectations in relation to those grade 3 incidents. And we've introduced, which is probably the key bit in all of this, the same robust scrutiny, governance and audit processes that we have for our grade 1s and grade 2s. So, and as with a lot of things, once you start measuring them and you put the focus of governance around them, the performance improves. It's not witchcraft. And we've improved the availability of performance information through Paul and his team around Power BI and the products we've got, so that we can really scrutinise around, right, what are the trends, when are the times, so the technology in the background is allowing some of that to happen around when do we need to increase staffing in our control room, when do we need to increase staffing across which areas to make sure that so there's a myriad of different bits of work going on to try and bring that focus around those grade 3 incidents to make sure that we don't drift and it doesn't become that lag where they become 2-3 days old.
And I think, it's probably fair to say, when you see the chart going from, as you can sort of see it there, sort of low or mid 40% all the way up to just shy of 80% from May of 24 to June of this year. I mean, that is a remarkable turnaround, and it's really, like I say, really reassuring. I suspect we're also going to see that play out in some reduction in complaints associated with this sort of area as well, which I think is a reflection of the fact what you were saying before around the types of complaints that we've been getting. I'm hopeful that actually we might not see it in a significant way, but I'm sure we'll have members of the public who are less likely to complain as a consequence of that.
You would certainly hope so.
Yeah. It's really promising. Okay, can we now move on to the next slide? which relates to domestic abuse. Supporting victims of domestic abuse is a top priority, and I've been really reassured by how the Constabulary takes this serious. And it's why I am investing in early intervention and prevention programmes to break the cycle of abuse. And we're going to be putting a particular emphasis in Halton. We're also going to be using technology in this space to identify repeat offenders and protect high-risk victims more effectively. But I really want to put on record that I will be scheduling a thematic session later to look at this particular area in more detail. I don't want us to just have one question associated with this today. There's a whole scheme of work which I think would reflect the interest that my office has in this space, but also the amount of work and prioritisation the Constabulary has been putting into this particular type of crime. So I don't want us to, I accept the work that's going on there, but we're going to drill down into that at a future meeting in much greater detail. Can we now move on to slide 19, which relates to recorded sexual offences? For the 12 months ending April 2025, the Constabulary had the 9th highest rate of sexual offences nationally and the 3rd highest in its most similar group of forces. Why is this the case in Cheshire?
Okay, and I think I touched on this earlier in that this is a vulnerability crime type generally, so you'll have your incidents that come in 999 because something's happened there and then that are going to be very similar across the country. But in terms of your hidden vulnerability and your work going into schools, going through partner agencies, building those relationships with our services so that we're getting their referrals in, and the victim confidence piece around people knowing that actually our work in this space, if you report this, we will take it seriously, we will listen to you, we will record it properly. So there isn't one golden bullet around this, and as I said, HMIC do crime data integrity inspections of forces where they can give you a number of gradings around. So we know that some forces are pulled up for under-recording in this space. We know that our last crime data integrity inspection said we were adequate, which isn't where we want to be. We want to be better than that. But our own audits in sexual offence space since then have been much higher than that. So I think there are a few angles to this. One is a confidence piece. One is the recording piece. And then the other bit is that training and awareness of officers and partners to say this is really serious and we will take this seriously and we'll deal with it accordingly.
Yeah, and I have been really impressed where we are sort of almost becoming a blueprint nationally, and it's certainly the case in many areas of policing. I think this is certainly somewhere where, again, there's an opportunity for Cheshire to sort of lead the way, and I'll certainly be taking further interest in this in the weeks, months and years ahead. I'd now like to bring us on to another slide which relates to homicide. And I want to first of all start by saying that I can see that this weekend has been a really tough time for officers and staff at Cheshire Police. And I want to put on record my appreciation for the work that you're doing in some of the most difficult of circumstances. Cheshire has the lowest homicide rate in the country, and what I can see is that when one happens, we all know how challenging it is for people who are working in solving that, helping victims, supporting others. But what has been done to achieve such low levels in our county?
Okay. So firstly, just to echo, obviously we've had 2 homicides this weekend, which one is one too many. Our staff have been outstanding, so they have turned out without exception, and we've managed to identify both individuals responsible for both of those and are on the process. One's mental health, one's going to be criminal justice outcome. But so when it happens, be reassured that we do take it with the level that you would expect us to. So in terms of prevention around homicide, we looked at we commissioned a project subject profile and a problem profile around homicide rates in Cheshire, and we saw that our main drivers were around county lines, domestic abuse was, and then public space violence. They generally are the spaces in which our homicides were happening. So it's then looking at, right, how do we put a response around those? So programmes such as Safer Streets, making sure that we've got our nighttime economy work underway properly, and that's not just about yellow coats on a Friday, Saturday night. That goes all the way to with our partners around licensing, looking at those problem premises where, you know, plastic glasses instead of glasses, all the things that we can put in place that stop someone's moment of madness on a Friday or Saturday night that results in a one-punch murder or manslaughter. So we tackle nighttime economy and public space violence in those sort of ways, and say through the Safer Streets. You look at domestic abuse, and we touched on it earlier, and I really welcome the fact that you want a thematic on it, because our domestic abuse performance is outstanding. I do not believe there's anywhere better in the country in terms of responding to domestic abuse victims. And we know that domestic abuse incidents lead to homicides on occasions, as we've seen this weekend. So it's making sure that, you know, we take positive action when we get to a domestic abuse incident. Is there previous history there? Are there witnesses? Are the victims? What are they telling us? What are the circumstances telling us? What CCTVs in there? Looking at all those investigative opportunities and taking positive action. And where we can't bring a criminal justice outcome, looking at domestic violence protection orders to give someone 28 days free of their assailant while we can get the support through the IDFA services into them. So the domestic violence space, we're doing a lot of work around that. And then county lines, it won't be a loss to anyone that we sit between two major cities. Merseyside is regularly in the top 3 forces for exporting county lines, and Greater Manchester also exports county lines. Probably going back 3 or 4 years, Cheshire was seen as a really safe place to come and deal drugs, and therefore we had an influx of county lines. We've got Operation Apollo, which was Home Office funding, which is a county lines team dedicated, and we are regularly seeing now intelligence saying that you can't get Class A drugs in some of our big towns. So as recently as last month, it was Warrington. There was no availability of crack cocaine or heroin, and they are real drivers for knife crime and violent crime. And our work in that space has significantly reduced the threat to life around county lines, because as you see with drugs, it's extremely profitable, and therefore people will use weapons to enforce and protect their income streams. So by identifying our key drivers of homicide and putting plans around each of those, sat under the Homicide Prevention Working Group, which is chaired by our Head of Crime, it gives us the ability to sort of scan what's happening and keep that under 12-month review around what are our drivers of homicide and how do we look to prevent them.
It's really reassuring that there is that sort of solid prevention approach. You know, when you're hearing about examples about trying to get glasses turned into plastic, because you can see, you know, it is these small but important changes which can have huge impacts on public safety. And it's hugely reassuring that the Constabulary is leading the way in those conversations within our towns. I was also recently presented, as well as members of the Police and Crime Panel, the work that's happening with the HRU and the stalking unit, and we were obviously exploring how the AI funding is going to be helping bring about justice faster for victims. But there was a really bit of an eye-opener, I think, for many panel members, which I think the public would also probably benefit from, which is that, you know, a stalker has a journey that they go on, and the truth is homicide is the very end of that journey, and it's all about where the intervention happens to prevent that from happening. And it was really reassuring to hear about how, you know, there are some people who rate the work that Cheshire does so well in this space, that people who have been victims of stalking have actually moved from areas of the country to try and move to Cheshire to have the benefit of the services that Cheshire has. But it's a real eye-opener that I think a lot of people don't appreciate. The work that Cheshire does intervenes in that journey of that stalker, and that's the benefit of the victim in a big way, and their family and others. Okay, could we move on to slide 24, which is relating to knife and firearm offences? So for the 12 months to the end of June 2025, the Constabulary recorded 26 serious firearms offences. Those are involving handgun, rifle and shotgun, and that compared to 18 in the previous year. For the benefit of the public, can you clarify what a serious firearms offence is and explain why we have seen this increase?
Absolutely. So the good news is we are not the OK Corral. Some of this is around definitions and how things are recorded. So the figures are based on the data return we provide to the Home Office for crimes that have been flagged as referring to or involving a firearm. So the term serious firearms offence relates to those where a handgun, rifle or shotgun has been referenced to being used involved, and we take out any reference to BB gun or toy gun. But I keep saying reference to. So if somebody rings and says, there's a man outside my house and I think he's got a gun, we will record that as a firearms-related offence.
Okay.
If we get there and we stop searching an individual who hasn't got a gun, we will still keep the crime recorded because it was the reference to a firearm. So in terms of firearms offences, we've had one firearms discharge in the previous 12 months. That was one too many, but it was a non-fatal shotgun discharge. And we are also seeing, I think since the dangerous dog legislation's come in and the focus on dogs, we are seeing more firearms offences recorded in relation to farmers and similar, often linked to livestock worrying and those sort of public perceptions. So whilst we've recorded 26, the reassurance I would give you is we've essentially had one firearms offence in terms of a discharge.
Well, that is a significant change in what the data shows us. So I wonder if we can really make reference to that in the performance pack, because this ultimately is publicly available. The Police and Crime Panel will most likely be reviewing this and also keen to probe further. But I think if, with that extra context you provided there, I think that will be a really valuable addition.
We can absolutely get that to you.
Okay, I'd like us to move on to slide 25, which relates to neighbourhood crime. Neighbour policing is a central part of my policing crime plan to keep Cheshire safe. And I'm really pleased to see that we've had a 9% decrease in neighbourhood crimes. Can you give me an update on the Safer Streets Summer? I have to think about that because I want to say Safer Streets Summer 2025 work that is happening across the towns in our county.
Okay, so it's essentially the initiative split into 4 key phases. So antisocial behaviour, crime and enforcement, diversion and support, and then visibility and engagement. Each local policing area, which we have 9, has provided their own summer reporting plan, and that outlines what activities taking place over the summer in conjunction with the local authority partners, because the partners are key to this. This is not something we do on our own. And there are 3 main force initiatives that are being repeated across all 9 local policing units. We've got retail days of action, so working with our partners to visit local retail shops within town centres, completing questionnaires around concerns whilst also providing that advice support and around things like how to upload CCTV onto our NICE system and provide that community intelligence. So the first of those took place on the 30th of June with the launch of the Safer Summer Streets campaign in Warrington, and further days are planned for Chester on the 23rd of July, so tomorrow indeed, and then Macclesfield on the 30th next week. We've got Cops on the Square, which is high visibility policing by way of a stand or stall in our town centres during key market days and on weekends. And our usual operation Street Safe will be in place with additional officers within our nighttime economies and the use of our safety bus for those who are vulnerable or find themselves in need of support on a night. And it's supplemented by our op sidelines patrols who will be targeting antisocial behaviour and our serious violence hotspots. We then run our Operation Crossbow, which has got the focus on reducing criminality via the road network across Cheshire. And whilst it's not inherently focused on town centre areas, it's deployed in a way that influences our town centre areas. So those major transport hubs, stopping criminality coming into our town centres and targeting non-road legal vehicle use, so things like e-scooters going through the town centre. We'll continue to use Project Servitor. Now, people will be aware that has its roots in counter-terrorism policing, and essentially it's deployments that can occur anywhere, anytime, no predictability. We don't give advance notice of it, and when we do a mixture of high-visibility patrols and then covert officers at the same time, looking at how people respond to the high-visibility patrols, and that allows us to make sure that our town centres and communities are safe at peak times. Those officers are trained specially, and they've around that identification of suspicious activity. And it also has the benefit of disrupting other town centre criminality, shoplifting, drug dealing, because of that. So the knock-on of that is quite beneficial towards that summer street safe work. We've got OpScepter, which is a police-led national initiative looking at awareness around knife crime. So that's not just enforcement, that's around education, and particularly with our young people, around people who carry knives because they feel like they need to carry a knife for protection. And then our train stations and other transport hubs, we use things such as knife arches just to offer that reassurance, and also, again, the deterrence piece, so that people know. And then finally, we've got Operation Lawmaker, which is a relaunch version of what was Operation Scrambler, and that's targeting the live incidents of off-road and non-road legal vehicle use. So it's a mixture of police motorcycles, road policing vehicles, air support, which can be in the form of our drone or the helicopter, and a mixture of plainclothes and uniformed neighbourhood officers. And it's been trialled across Warrington and Widnes, so that our other local policing areas can bid in when other problem-solving tactics have failed. And what we're really trying to do there is prevent pursuits with police vehicles with kids on scooters, and because nobody wants to see that situation. So all of those together are forming our summer plans, and then we are collating monthly updates of the action we take in line with the government reporting system, and that's going into yourselves and the Home Office, and scrutinised weekly through our local policing group meeting.
Well, it's really, really thorough. You can see that there isn't a sort of a one-size-fits-all sort of programme of events here. This is vast. It covers huge different areas of crime that takes place in neighbourhoods and in our town centres. I'm really pleased to hear about the work tackling illegal vehicles, our e-bikes and e-scooters, which came through really clear in the Citizens' Assembly in Widnes and Runcorn as something that universally, across all the demographics in the room, all the different individuals, it was universally, we hate them. We feel it is an injustice that there is no action being taken. But there was also an acceptance that people know that the police have got a really difficult job of dealing with that type of activity. So it is one of the reasons why I'm so pleased that we can explore new technology such as the drones to give us more tools to help bring about justice in our communities. Can I now move on to the next slide, which relates to hate crime? In the last 12 months leading up to the end of June 2025, the Constabulary recorded 2,394 hate crimes, and that was a 21% increase from the year before. It's a big part of that spike, we all understand, came during that public disorder that we saw across the UK in July and August of last year. And I'm committed to ensuring that we don't head in that direction again. And again, for all the things that you've said already this morning, Deputy Chief Constable, I can see that the Constabulary absolutely is on this. We're seeing more and more hate speech around pride events, and it's starting to feel like the kind of language is just being accepted as normal, and obviously that isn't okay. And I spoke about this at Police and Crime panel previously, and I had a conversation this weekend with one of the chairs of one of our other pride events who has been shocked by what they've had to deal with. This kind of talk sadly doesn't stay online. And it does spill out into the real world, and it turns into abuse and threats and in some cases violence. Can you give me and the public reassurance that this is being dealt with robustly, and what is being done to make it clear that hate crime in whatever form it presents will not be tolerated in Cheshire?
Cheshire's a really nice county, and we are determined that anybody who lives here can be whoever or whatever they want to be. And our job around supporting that, nourishing that, and enforcing that where we need to around unacceptable behaviour. You'll have seen the Pride event with the local councillor where we ended up taking enforcement action around someone causing disruption at that, and we'll continue to where people, that balance between sort of Article 8 and freedom of expression and where that breaches out into criminal offences. What I would say is hate crime is unique against all other crimes at the initial deployment stage, because the incident cannot be closed from our incident list without an inspector reviewing it. So we can't close it down for slow time investigation until the force incident manager and other inspectors reviewed it, and that ensures it gets that review by an officer of that rank, because it is such a serious crime, and we know that hate crimes are often intrinsically linked with vulnerability, and we've all seen things in the past around where people who become victims of hate crime have taken their own lives or similar. So we do understand the importance of making sure that people who are victims of hate crime are really supported properly. They have their own risk assessments to ensure that all officers involved in the case are aware of the risk involved and that the appropriate response can be tailored to each incident. And again, we can't close the crime until the risk assessment is completed. And once it's at the investigation stage, we ensure that we've got further layers of scrutiny that aren't necessarily in keeping with other crime types. So each of our local policing unit, again, there's 9 of those, they've all got a hate crime SPOC, and it's the role of that SPOC to ensure that we've followed the mandatory steps, we've got all our linking correct, because that allows us to use sort of our IT products to identify, again, people who are repeat, locations that are repeat, or individuals who are repeat offending around them, for any emerging patterns or repeat victimisation. And that allows us to make sure that we can address those patterns, we can support victims, and we can make sure that our offenders are arrested. And then we've got our quarterly performance reviews that are chaired by the ACCs, holding our local policing commanders to account, and hate crime is a specific item on the agenda to make sure that we really understand the detail and we are robust around that, with a lack of tolerance. We've got a force hate crime lead, which is Andy Baker over at Crewe, Chief Inspector. He collates the monthly reports from each local policing unit, assesses the patterns and trends in hate crimes, and ensures that the mandatory linkings present around hate crime flags, our 10-point plans and our risk assessments. And then again, we link in nationally around, and you mentioned last year, we saw national trends around that. So we link into our Force Intelligence Bureau around, actually, is this something that's Cheshire specific? Is it something that's national? Is there a way we need to respond to it differently? And then our hate crimes are presented at our local community cohesion group meetings so that we can receive feedback from our local community around how they feel. We've dealt with investigations and look at feedback opportunities for warts and all, where we think this was good, bad, and opportunities to improve all the time. And then investigations can only be finalised by the Crown Prosecution Service, so in terms of charge, caution, NFA, or an officer of the rank of inspector who reviews all the lines of inquiries and actually have we done what everyone would expect us to do in that case, and if we haven't brought anyone to justice for it, have we provided that support to the victim or victims around that to make sure that that's and then in addition to the standard report methods through phone, online and help desks, we've also got arrangements for more than 40 locations around the county acting as third-party reporting centres for hate crime. So these are charities, groups and organisations where individuals can go into and report to them, and then they will provide advice and talk to us without that individual having to report it directly to the police, recognising that in some of our diverse communities, police aren't always seen as friendly and the right people to come to. So we are trying to tackle it on different fronts.
No, look, I can see the seriousness by which the constabulary takes hate crime. What I have witnessed over a number of years, certainly when it comes to events such as Pride, which in our county are overwhelmingly great days, family-friendly events where people, frankly, come together and just have a lovely summer day. And we've seen it go from being that to actually getting a huge amount of online sort of hate directed towards it. And then as I spoke to one particular organiser, their signage for their event has been vandalised, and I know they've been reporting that. But you can sort of see, and obviously we've had a recent arrest of an elected official at such an event. So there has been this slow and steady increase towards this sort of hate crime approach, which is clearly worrying, and it's not just hurty words, as some would call it. It is real criminal activity that, in the end, can move towards violence. So I absolutely sort of applaud you for the work that you're doing in this space, and I know it is hard to get right, but I think we have to do everything we can to make sure that we don't have what have largely been accepted, and I would definitely say for Pride events historically, largely been accepted as just part of our calendar year without any concerns, but now unfortunately have become sort of weaponised by some. So I absolutely applaud the work you were doing in this space. Can I now move on as we conclude the questions relating to the performance pack and move into Commissioner's questions, which are more broadly based around correspondence that I have with the public. My first one is that with children breaking up for the school holidays, there has been more road users being out and about. I want to focus on road safety and what steps is the constabulary taking to reduce road-related offences and fatalities, and how does this align with the plan's focus on prevention and community safety?
Okay, we take road safety really seriously because amongst anything else, we've got the biggest motorway network in the UK through our county, so we have to obviously police those roads for everyone's safety. We are active members of the National Road Policing Operations Network, and we take part in every single national campaign that is run around road safety. This year so far, we've undertaken a commercial vehicle operation looking at the damaged HGV drivers when they may be not driving in accordance with how they should be, can cause a Fatal 5 operation looking at the 5 big causes of road injuries and deaths. This one was a specific focus on denying criminal use of the road network. We've had a 2-wheel operation focusing on powered 2 wheels and e-bikes, and we have an ongoing drunk and drug drive operation. Further campaigns are also planned through the summer, including the Road Peace National Road Victims Month in August and a campaign aimed at young drivers and riders in September. All of the campaigns include our Cheshire Road Safety Group partners because, again, it's not something we can tackle through enforcement alone. The motorcycle campaign we've just done included the events around rider safety and the Think Bike campaigns. We also take part in the other national events such as the National Community Speed Watch Day of Action with our members of our community, and that involved a number of Speed Watch volunteers and initiatives across the county where we go to education and enforcement. And then on a daily basis, our roads crime unit, our police motorbike unit and our commercial vehicle unit target our Fatal 5 offences, which I touched on earlier, which is driving whilst impaired through drink or drugs, use of mobile phone while driving, driving without a seatbelt, speeding, and driving without due care, which are our top serious collision, and as part of that, our top serious collision locations are tasked every single day. So every single day we have directed patrols looking at locations for our Fatal 5. And as a constabulary, we've also got Op Caesar, which is our spring and summer response to motorcycle collisions at repeat locations, the big one being the Cat and Fiddle over on the 537 in Macclesfield, where sunny day you get motorbikes around. And then I touched earlier on Operation Lawmaker, which is our response to e-bikes and off-road bikes. Nobody wants to see police pursuits of young people on bikes because often it's not those individuals who end up coming off worse out of those. So it's how we respond to avoid that through things like drone technology. And we've got a dedicated roads police and education officer who attends schools, colleges, public events, talking around inputs on those. And you'll see at headquarters, we've got a car that fire have cut open to sort of demonstrate the impact of that, which is our Think car and our Think bike trailers, and they are crashed vehicles mounted on a trailer that have been involved in fatal collisions. With the support of the family's consent, we take them out and say, look, this could be you or your loved one. So again, we're tackling it from a local sort of e-bike all the way up to HGV drivers who aren't driving in accordance with professional driver regulations.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right to acknowledge the amount of motorway network that we have, and you know, PCCs across the country talk about sort of unique pressures that they have in their force area, and how, you know, we would like extra money to acknowledge that, and truthfully we all have one that we can, and for us, let's be frank about it, the road network is one of those things. We are actually making the roads safe and ensuring the roads are safe for many people who do not pay for policing here in Cheshire. They pay elsewhere, but the duty is on us to make sure that it's safe for everybody, and the volumes of people that come through the county are huge. I've received some correspondence about Operation Close Pass. Can you explain how this works and its benefits, as well as activities that have been done recently to improve the safety of roads for all users?
Okay, so Operation Close Pass is targeted at the protection of cyclists mainly, because recognising they are amongst the most vulnerable of road users, you've got very little protection, and it's the behaviours of drivers, intentionally or otherwise, driving too close to them and passing too close. So it's both education and enforcement aspects of it. So essentially we do it with the local authority and the fire service, and it's around raising awareness, members of the public, and understanding what the legislation around it is. So we have a stop site where we'll have a map placed out which gives you the safe distance between a a cyclist and a vehicle, around what that should look like, and then we'll have police officers riding bikes as spotters. So I wouldn't volunteer for it myself, but they are the spotters to identify those individuals who are riding too close. We'll then they'll be stopped then by a police patrol and taken to the stop site, where we will deliver that education around. Look, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. Do you realise this is, if a bike suddenly wobbles, you're going to cause catastrophic injuries. We did it last month as part of the National Two Wheels campaign focusing on pedal cycles. It was a 5-day road safety event around safe cycling practices as well, across various demographics. And it was a multifaceted approach from primary school children, daily commuters, motorists and recreational riders around, and also included a targeted session for female cyclists looking to build confidence. So again, we're trying to do it on a variety of routes. And the other bit I would say is we still absolutely take enforcement. This education is one strand of it, enforcement is the other. So where people are driving dangerously or putting other people at risk, and we've got evidence of it through dash cam or whatever, we will still take that enforcement action.
It's very helpful. My next question is relating to something that has been in a lot of interest recently, and I would appreciate this can be a complex area, but I'd encourage you to have as concise an answer as possible on this type of area of interest. There's been a noticeable increase in speculation on social media about the impact that HMOs are having on crime, particularly in Runcorn. Can you clarify the actual situation across the county to help address any misinformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are aware of the video circulating on social media that in relation specifically to the Greenway Road area, Runcorn, and also the response of the residents who actually live in that area and know what it's like and feel like it. The video made reference to issues with antisocial behaviour, violence, noise nuisance and domestic incidents, and also many of the incidents, or a reference to many incidents being linked to homes of multiple occupancy. The issues referenced in the video do not correlate with the incidents they've reported to Cheshire Police or to the concerns that are being raised by local residents to officers in the area. Over the past 6 months, we've been called to one incident relating to a HMO on Greenway Road. That was a domestic incident, and we made an arrest. In relation to the Cheshire-wide picture for HMOs, there are a number of hotels and HMOs across the county, some of which are used in relation to as bed sits and squats, not squats, bed sits and individuals, and others which are around the housing of asylum seekers, foreign nationals. We do not disclose the locations of those because they're operationally sensitive for obvious reasons, but we do have specific arrangements in place with our local policing units to address any incidents associated with the locations and to monitor any community tensions in order to protect both the wider community and also the residents at those addresses who can be quite vulnerable. And we liaise with our local partners, immigration enforcement and the Home Office in relation to the arrangements over the year. And obviously the Chief Constable, and I know your office yourself, are lobbying nationally, including with the Policing Minister, around national arrangements which would improve the local capability of the police to respond to incidents.
That's absolutely right. I am hugely reassured by the seriousness that the Constabulary takes with regards to crime that could be happening in and around HMOs, and hearing about the sort of the willingness of officers to go out and really speak to members of the public off the back of speculation on social media is hugely reassuring, because I've been quite open about the fact that if crime isn't being reported, but it is happening, we do want to fix that. My next question is that if someone has concerns, of course we want to hear about it. How do they make a report?
Okay, so we've got, if a crime is in progress and offender on scene, life at risk, 999, always if there's an immediate threat to property or life, people can call 101. They can report it through our Cheshire Police website. If it doesn't need an immediate police response, we've obviously got our local beat meetings, surgeries or officers out on patrol who incidents can be reported to. And then if people, we've got our help desks, 5 help desks that are staffed in sort of office hours. And then finally, if people want to report an incident anonymously, they can do it through the charity Crime Stoppers on a free phone number. Yeah,
and that's precisely it. We repeating those options is really important in this space. And so I welcome you being so open about how that does happen. When it is reported, what is the standard process that's followed to investigate and respond?
So I'll take you back to the question around the grade 1s and 2s. So whatever channel it comes in, we'll do our Thrive risk assessment, because as I say, we often get people who say, I don't want to bother you, and then you read it and go, no, you absolutely do need to bother us, and we need to get there quickly. So we will assess it in terms of threat, risk, harm, investigative opportunities, vulnerability, engagement. Some incidents will require a police officer to respond. Others might go to a local beat team to inform local priorities. If it's just information or intelligence, it'll go to our Force Intelligence Bureau for that identification of pattern trends, problem solving. If it amounts to a crime, we'll record it, and it may be passed to an officer for crime investigation. And then other incidents that don't require a police response, we may share with partners as well.
Great. I think this scrutiny function absolutely does have a purpose, which is to see where the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Constabulary are absolutely working hand in hand to take serious a matter that is being raised to us, whether it is through the formal channels of reporting or whether it is through more informal discussions and online sort of suggestions that are taking place. I am reassured by what you've told me this morning and the work that I've seen taking place over the last few months in this particular area. And I know that in the event that something does happen, the police absolutely has the mechanisms in place to be on the scene as fast as possible and to make sure that victims are protected as much as possible. So I do think it's important that we have this really honest dialogue about something that is now in the public domain. So thank you for providing that clarity. I'd now like us to move on to my next question relating to Wilmslow. What a lot of people don't realise is that the public owns the police estates, such as the cars and the buildings. And as Police and Crime Commissioner, it is my job to look after those assets. And it's why I was so pleased to visit the new Wilmslow police station last week, which is a great example of plans to modernise and which is so clearly set out in the policing crime plan. Can you outline how this facility is equipped to support modern policing, both in terms of technology and how it improves service to the public and officers?
Okay, so the new police station in Wilmslow that I know you opened, it was with a lot of the local kids, which was lovely to see, is set to lead the way as one of the most energy efficient and sustainable buildings in the country. We are expecting that following confirmation of accreditation next week, it will be the only police station nationally and the first public building in Cheshire to achieve the Passive House design standards, which means a reduction in energy consumption by up to 90% compared to a conventional office building. And it also means significantly lower energy bills because, as you quite rightly pointed out, it's public money that we're spending, so we need to make sure it's spent properly and effectively, and it helps maximise that police budget and divert it to where we really need it. I think it's also a really important statement to the public of Wilmslow around the fact that we recognise it needed a new police station. It's located for Wilmslow, and it means that we keep that really strong police presence in the surrounding areas. And then for our staff working out of it, it's a state-of-the-art building, and actually from a welfare point of view has got the provisions you would expect and keeps our staff looked after while they're there and working, which again in turn allows them to give the best possible version of them to the public as they deliver that service.
No, it's great, and I think it's a real example of what other parts of our county can expect when their police estate comes to the end of its sort of life, where the building is not as it was when it was first built, and obviously we've got crew in the pipeline with a new station there, so you can sort of clearly see the ambition of what the new facilities will look like once we actually get round to putting the funding in place to deliver them. And I'll now move on to my last question relating to help desks. I continue to receive a lot of questions about the availability of help desks. Can you explain what was the thinking behind the decision to reduce help desks?
Okay, the really big message I would give to the public here as well, whilst we've reduced help desks, those police stations are still open. So I was in Runcorn Police Station this morning. Before I came here, there were 10 or 20 cops who, had the public rung 999, they would have been available to break off from what they were doing and go. So police
It's a really welcome reassurance.
Yeah, our police stations are still open for business. So in 2022, looking at that best spend of public money, we undertook a assessment of demand into the organisation, looking at telephone, online and public help desks. We talked about that abandonment rate earlier, which is people ringing us, not being able to get through, hanging up. That was at 17% then. And simply put, it was at 17% because we didn't have enough bums on seats to answer those calls. And some of that was because the staff who could do that role were in some of our help desks. And when we did that assessment, they were getting less than 10 visitors a week. So across a week, we would have a fully staffed help desk with single figures going into it. So when you start looking at where are we putting our public money for best results for the public, we were able to move some of those staff into those control room functions, which then has allowed us to improve our responsiveness around answering calls, because if we can't answer in the first place, our chances of getting to you to help you are significantly reduced. The proposals around our help desk is really important to say. It went to public consultation, so the public got a say in this as well, around these are our plans, these are the reasons why, and this is where we will move those resources, and it enabled 21 additional posts to be put into the control room that came out of that. And the reality is that whilst contact via telephone and online was increasing significantly, footfall into the help desks wasn't. So that was reducing. And then we've increased our numbers of PCSOs over that time span that help desks have been reduced. And that's allowed us to have our beat surgeries, our offices in town centres. So we've been able to have that public face where people could go in. And we've also altered some of our routes around people who were signing on, document production, things like that, which has meant that some of those traditional facilities that help desk offered weren't needed anymore.
I mean, one of the recent examples that I've seen of this is I was at, again, Nantwich last week doing a walk around and speaking to the sergeant there around how, yes, the help desk there has closed, but they're doing actually a lot more officer in the square sort of meetings, and so they're actually having a much greater engagement than they ever were. So I do think there's a huge amount of explanation to be done around actually there is another way which is probably more likely to have those interactions that lead to people coming forward with intelligence or reporting crimes as opposed to just walking through the door of a police station. So I do understand much of those decisions. I also recognise that many people who would like help desks aren't necessarily saying that they themselves want to use one, but there is a position which is around it would be a nice thing to have. But one of the areas I am keen is how are we ensuring people who need face-to-face support? And one particular area I'm interested in is perhaps it's a domestic abuse victim. How are they still able to get the help that they need when they need it? So
when you contact us, particularly around domestic abuse, we will make that assessment of safety. So is it safe for us to ring you back? Because if it's not safe for us to ring you back, then we don't want to compromise anyone's safety. So it's all part of that big risk assessment. One thing we're quite pleased of is some forces use technology in the domestic abuse space. We don't, because people are using video calls for domestic abuse. We insist on, no, actually, we're going to come and see you because you don't know who stood in the background of that video call. So we will attend and we will make sure that we provide that. And obviously, we've still got our independent domestic violence advocates who will support our victims. And we've got charities like the National Domestic Violence Helpline who will provide those contact details for as well to ensure that our domestic abuse victims are getting support in any way. Essentially, they want that tailored support. And Single Online Home also allows people to report around discreetly, I need some support through this channel.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm afraid that does conclude today's meeting. And I really welcome the work that's gone in to this performance pack. And I think what has been a really thorough scrutinising and questioning of what the data presents. And again, thanks for answering those more broader Commissioner's questions. That does conclude today's meeting, and I'd wish you sort of safe travel back to police headquarters